千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Zi. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. Once upon a time in ancient China, the land was split into multiple kingdoms. You know, this was before they were all united as one empire under one emperor. So before that, different kingdoms, and in one of the kingdoms, in the outlying regions of this ancient land, there was a king who was served by a wise minister. This is their story. Whenever the king faced difficult problems, had a difficult decision to make, he knew that he could depend on the minister for good advice. He could go to the minister and count on the minister providing him with wisdom. This particular king, this ruler, enjoyed hunting as a diversion. So one day, he was out in the forest again. He's hunting birds, he's enjoying the outdoors, and as usual, the minister was with him. The minister was coming along with him and his guards to keep him company. After a while, the hunting party sighted a wild wolf and they gave chase. So the king saw an opening. So he took out an arrow from his quiver. He notched the arrow and he scored a solid hit on the wolf. The wolf went down hard. The minister and the guards cheered. They all praised the king. Your Majesty, that was an incredible shot. Your Majesty, your archery skills are amazing. They praised him. So the king was exhilarated, was exuberant. He dismounted and he approached the wolf, lying or moving on the ground. He wished to claim his prize. So he walked right up to it, and he was careless in his exuberance. You know, he was thinking to himself, that's right. Not only am I a ruler, but I am also a mighty warrior. Suddenly, the wolf sprang up and bit his hand with all its strength. Too late, the king realized that the wolf was plain dead. It did that just to lure him closer so it could attack. He was shocked, he was hurt, and the wolf escaped into the woods. The king saw that one of his fingers was bitten off. He was in a lot of pain. He was bleeding profusely. He had to stop the bleeding. He had to return to the palace immediately. So on his way back to the palace, he asked his minister, why did I suffer this misfortune? The minister said, Your Majesty, this misfortune may be what fortune depends upon. What? The king was displeased. What? What are you talking about? That makes no sense at all. In his great pain, bleeding finger, he thought the minister was mocking him, and this made him angry. He ordered his guards to arrest the minister immediately, to throw him in jail. So after about a month or so, the king was healing up. He was minus one little finger. But luckily, the wound did not get infected. It was healing well. And sitting around the palace, the king was bored. So once again, he decided to go out into the woods to hunt, this time without the minister, who was still in jail. Now the king thought he knew where to go in the forest, but he got lost. Not wishing to admit this to anyone, not wishing to lose face, he continued forward stubbornly, followed by his guards. He did not realize that he was going into an unknown territory where barbaric savages roamed. By the time the king realized the danger he was in, it was too late. The barbarians had set up an ambush, killed his guards, and captured him. So he tried to tell them, "Don't you know who I am? I'm the king." He was trying to demand his freedom. He was demanding, "Take me to your leader immediately." But the barbarians paid him no heed. So he was all tied up and brought back to the tribe. Then his captors set up a ritual to celebrate the victory. Victory in killing his guards and capturing him. Soon, the king realized there was a fate worse than death awaiting him. He realized he was about to be sacrificed to their barbaric deity. So he was tied up on their sacrificial altar. Their priest began chanting, waving a dagger, ceremonial dagger around. The priest got ready to skewer him in a particularly painful way, dictated by the ritual. Everyone in the tribe surrounded the altar, eagerly expecting a gruesome death. Suddenly, the priest noticed that the king was missing a little finger. He stopped the ritual. He stopped chanting. He stopped waving the ceremonial dagger around. He yelled in frustration. He scolded the others for not noticing sooner. Still tied up, the king listened to their arguments back and forth and figured out what was going on. Every sacrifice to their deity must be whole in order to show respect. His missing finger was a flaw. It made him incomplete, and this would be displeasing to their deity. Just putting him in that ritual like they have done could result in divine anger and punishment. So the barbarians quickly released him. They cursed him for being so unworthy. They kicked him out of their gathering. Once he was free like that, he ran away as quickly as he could. No one paid him any attention. And now that the king knew which direction was the wrong way to go, he went in the opposite direction, trying to find his way back. It wasn't easy. It took him the entire night and half of next day. But eventually, he made it back to familiar territory, where he was found by the rescue party that had gone out searching for him. He was exhausted, but at least he was safe once again. Upon reflection, the king realized the truth to the minister's words. The minister said, "Your Majesty, the misfortune may be what the fortune depends upon." The king realized that the misfortune, the wolf biting off his finger, turned out to be exactly what he needed for his good fortune, being released by the savages. It's what the good fortune depended upon. So the king set the minister free. He could not wait to tell the minister what happened. He related his misadventure to the minister. After all, the minister was his trusted advisor for many years. So the king said to the minister, "You see, you were right about me. My misfortune became what my good fortune depended on. But I must point out one thing about you. You are wrong about yourself. Because my misfortune, getting bitten by the wolf, became your misfortune too. Why? Because I threw you in jail." "Your Majesty," the minister responded, "if you hadn't thrown me in jail, I would still be with you on this ill-fated hunt. Right? I would probably be captured alongside with you by the savages. So when they discovered you were not a suitable sacrifice for their deity, who do you think they would turn to sacrifice instead? Well, it would be me. Therefore, my misfortune of being thrown in jail turns out to be the key that my good fortune depended on. My good fortune of avoiding a fate worse than death." The end. So that is the story of the king and the minister. Another classic tale that is all about the central concept of fortune and misfortune and their interplay in Tao philosophy. What it tells us is that the world is all about change. Life is all about change. Fate and destiny, all about change. What seems like a good thing can turn into a bad thing. What seems like a bad thing can turn into a good thing. So this story is similar to the story that I have in the Tao of Daily Life, chapter 8, but it has its own special ingredients that I will explain as we go. First, let's talk about what the story is telling us, what it means, how it corresponds with this chapter of the Daodejing. So the king's misfortune was not what he thought at first. He thought it was great misfortune, bad luck, but it saved his life, which was a great fortune. In a similar way, the minister's misfortune, being in jail, saved his life as well. So the king realized negative can lead to positive. Life is all about this kind of transformation. The king also realized that it doesn't do him any good to complain about the misfortune. It doesn't make things any better. It doesn't solve his problems. Understanding the transformation, the transition, well, that is the key. This then can become a valuable lesson that he can apply to all aspects of ruling the kingdom, to know how things can switch around, can transform, can morph into from one to the other. And this corresponds with the line from the Daodejing, misfortune is what fortune depends upon. because life is all about this kind of transformation from misfortune to fortune and back, rather than to complain, it is wiser to observe, understand, and make use of the transformation. So this is from the perspective of the king. What about for us? Let's explore that. We too encounter setbacks in life. We too suffer misfortune. We often assume the worst. This was a horrible thing that happened to me. This was terrible. There's no redeeming quality to it. It's just bad, period. And yet, what this story tells us is that a setback may actually be an opportunity. It may actually be a good thing. So in life, if we have lost something important, something of value initially, we may be really stressed out about that. But after a while, though, it can possibly lead to a realization that, I don't need it as much as I thought. I actually don't need to be attached to it. In a similar way, we were talking about a few slides ago, we were talking about relationships. We were talking about breakups. So what if you go through a heartbreak in your life? Well, after some time, you may come to the realization, in one possible scenario, you may realize that the other person is not a good fit. There's somebody else out there who will be much better. So one can always learn from misfortune. In a breakup, you may learn that, hey, by leaving, the ex has just made room, created an opening in my life for the more suitable person to come into it. So these examples go on and on and on. And I want to also cite the real world example. This is often reported in the news that you come across a situation whenever there's a plane crash. There's reporting on people who missed that flight. So initially, when they missed that flight, they think of it as misfortune, but then they also missed not just the plane, but the plane crash as well. And you can also see that in life, when one door closes, another door opens. Another door opens, so you can take a different path, and the different path may be a better path. In other words, an example like losing a job, it may be something that needs to happen before you can go in a different direction to find a better career. Or it may be the motivation that an entrepreneur needs to start his or her own business to attain success. For a fact, Steve Jobs himself acknowledged that when he was kicked out, when he was fired from Apple Computer many, many years ago, initially he was shocked. Later on, though, he realized it was the best thing that ever happened to him. He eventually returned to Apple Computer to take the reins again. But prior to that, he did a whole bunch of things as a result of leaving Apple Computer, like founding Pixar. So we would not have the Toy Story series as we know today, plus all the other great Pixar features, if that hadn't happened. So, bottom line, if we jump to conclusions, it's possible we'll lose the lesson, we'll miss the lesson. So rather than to get angry or complain, the best thing to realize is that these reversals happen to everyone. So it's not just the dark cloud. We have to keep in mind the silver lining. There's a lesson in there for us to learn from, so we will know what to change in us, what to improve. our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.